Ever wonder what it's like to live in a place where kindness still matters, where every act of care changes lives? What if I told you that place exists and might be closer than you think? In a world that seems to move too fast, where so many seniors feel left behind, there are still communities choosing to slow down, look each other in the eye, and lend a helping hand. Today, let's dive into real stories of transformation, stories that prove it's never too late to make a difference, or to feel like we're still part of something bigger. If you've ever thought your best days were behind you, this video is a powerful reminder. Life can surprise and inspire at any age. Because when hearts come together, everyday miracles happen. Chapter 1. The Village of Hope. In the scorching heart of Piaui's backlands, where cracked earth had silenced dreams for decades and hope seemed carried away by the dry wind, a simple but powerful idea took root. At 72 years old, Dona Mariinha had seen plenty in her life. The daughter of farmers, mother of 5, and grandmother of 12. She knew hardship and loss intimately. But she also carried a quiet strength inside her, the kind only years and faith can cultivate. It was on a sweltering afternoon, sitting in a straw chair under the porch, that she had a thought that would change everything. What if we started planting again, but together, not to sell, but to feed those in need? At first, there were just 3 of them. Mariinha, her neighbor Lourdes, a 68-year-old widow toughened by life, and her granddaughter Ana, a 14-year-old who dreamed of becoming a teacher. They grabbed their hoes, dug into the earth with their bare hands, and planted the first seeds with what little they had. Cilantro, lettuce, tomatoes, green onions. Criticism and skeptical glances rained down. Some called it a waste of time, insisting nothing could thrive in that barren soil. But Dona Mariinha just smiled. She knew they weren't just growing a garden, they were growing pride, community, hope. Over time, more women joined. Then came their husbands, children, grandchildren. Everyone contributed what they could. A bucket of water, a borrowed shovel, free time in the evening, and the garden grew. Tomato plants swelled with bright red fruit. Lettuce sprouted lush and green. Cilantro perfumed the morning air. Soon, the harvest was feeding over 30 families in the community. But they didn't stop there. They sold the surplus at the local market and used the money to buy school supplies for children, medicine for the elderly, and even repairs for the village's broken well. The garden became a symbol of something far greater: belonging, dignity, life. "I thought we couldn't do anything," says Dona Lourdes, her eyes glistening. "After losing my husband, I believed my life was over. But now I wake up wanting to live. We laugh, we sing, we work together. Now I know, together we're strong." As the camera pans across that fertile patch of earth in the middle of the desert, you see more than leaves and roots. You see hugs, smiles, stories woven by a shared purpose. It's living proof that age doesn't limit the power to transform, that even when the world seems to forget the elderly, they still have so much to teach and to build. And so, in this village of packed dirt and giant hearts, something rare blooms these days: collective hope. Chapter 2. The Fresh Start Workshop. In the gray concrete jungle of São Paulo, a city of contrasts where skyscrapers tower over shanty towns, where the relentless pace swallows stories before they even begin, a tiny space tucked between alleyways holds one of the most beautiful tales of transformation you'll hear today. Meets her, Alberto, 78 years old, a retired fabric cutter with steady hands and a calm gaze. He's the heart behind this seed of change. After decades in the textile industry, He retired with little more than a toolbox, a few needles, and a heart full of memories. But retirement didn't quiet the restless spirit of a man who always believed sewing could do more than stitch fabric. It could mend broken lives. It was during a visit to a homeless shelter that Seu Alberto had an idea. What if I taught what I know? What if sewing wasn't just a job, but a path, a way to heal? At first, few believed in it. He had to make do with a tiny leaky room, donated sewing machines, and fabric scraps destined for the trash. But where others saw waste, he saw worth. And more than that, he saw people where others only saw statistics. The first students arrived. Young people like Jamila, 23, who spent her adolescence bouncing between shelters and sidewalks, collecting scars and rejections. When she first stepped into the Fresh Start workshop, her eyes carried the exhaustion of someone who'd learned early to shield herself from the world. But it only took one lesson, one patient explanation, one sincere, "You can do this," from someone who believed in her, for something to shift. It's not just about sewing, Jamila says, smiling as she handles fabric like it's a second chance. It's about learning to rebuild your own life. Today, she runs her own small clothing business and, in her free time, returns to the workshop to teach others like her. The Fresh Start workshop has become both a refuge and a factory of futures. Over 100 people have passed through its doors. Some opened their own ateliers. Others were hired by big manufacturers. There were those who went back to school, reconnected with family, or finally rented a place to call home. And Seu Alberto. He's still there every day, wearing his apron, his gentle smile, and those steady hands. There's no secret, he says. We just need someone who sees our worth before we can see it ourselves. For him, teaching sewing was never just about straight stitches and perfect hems. It was always about restoring dignity, repairing what the world had torn apart, and the most beautiful part? His age isn't a barrier, it's his greatest strength. At 78, he's living proof that it's never too late to start over, or to help others do the same. With every new student, every life reclaimed, he plants more than skills. He plants belonging, because in that simple, vibrant room, no one is invisible. And so in the heart of a city that rarely pauses to listen, the Fresh Start workshop keeps humming, stitching more than clothes, stitching futures, stitching hope. Chapter 3. The Green Community. In the vibrant, challenging outskirts of Medellin, Colombia, where for years the soundtrack was sirens, gunshots, and fear, something extraordinary began to happen. Quietly, persistently, and green. It was an ordinary morning when Miguel, just 10 years old, did something no one expected. In a forgotten corner of his street where trash and the remains of an old sofa once piled up, he dug a hole with his bare hands, took a sapling he'd gotten at school, and planted his first tree. No one asked him to. No promise of reward. That simple, almost invisible act was the seed of a transformation that would change the entire neighborhood. At first, neighbors noticed with curiosity, then with admiration. Some called him El Niño Loco de los Árboles, the crazy tree kid. But Miguel, with the quiet determination of someone who just wants to see something beautiful grow, returned every day with a water bottle, guarding his tiny tree like a treasure. 2 weeks later, an elderly woman, Doña Catalina, planted another sapling. Then her grandson joined. Within a month, there were 10 new trees. By 2 months, 20. People began organizing. Some brought saplings. Others cleared vacant lots. Kids, teens, adults, and elders united for something once thought impossible. Reviving a forgotten, violent, scarred space with life. And so the Green Community Project was born. Today, 7 years later, That same street has over 1,000 trees planted by volunteers. Trees that provide shade where there was once only heat and neglect. Trees that clean the air, reduce dust, and, most importantly, rewrite the identity of a place once synonymous with fear. But it didn't stop there. Through collective effort, the community built benches from reclaimed wood, a colorful playground with slides, an open-air amphitheater made of recycled tires, now home to music performances, storytelling, and environmental workshops. People began gathering outside again. Kids played in the streets. Elders sat under the trees to chat, play dominoes, and share coffee. We used to lock ourselves indoors. Now we meet out here. It's like the street belongs to us again, says Doña Yolanda, 66, who waters the plants daily with a bucket and a smile. Miguel, now 17, is the face of this change. He studies at a technical school, dreams of becoming an environmental engineer, and wants to expand the project to other neighborhoods. I used to think my street could never change, but it did. And so did I, he says, eyes shining, as he proudly shows off the guava tree he planted with his dad. A man once unemployed, now leading the community's recycling efforts. And perhaps that's the greatest lesson of the green community. It's not just about planting trees. It's about planting connections, roots, belonging. It's proof that change doesn't start with grand plans, but with small, intentional acts. Today, the sound echoing through these streets isn't violence. It's leaves rustling in the wind. It's children laughing. It's neighbors rewriting their future together. Chapter 4. The Care Network. In a quiet neighborhood in the countryside of Minas Gerais, where mornings begin with the baker's whistle and windows still open for chats with neighbors, a silent but powerful web of kindness began to grow. It all started with Dona Nilda, 74 years young, a retired widow whose eyes sparkled with wisdom. She was the kind of woman who knew everyone's name and never let a soul pass by without offering a freshly brewed coffee. But something troubled her. She noticed more and more of her elderly neighbors becoming isolated. Some had children who moved away. Others had lost lifelong partners. Many were wrestling with loneliness, mobility issues, the forgetfulness that comes with age, and worst of all, the crushing feeling of being left behind. I'd see houses with lights off all day, windows that never opened again, silences that screamed, Dona Nilda recalls, her eyes glistening. Then I thought, if I can still do something, why not do it? With a worn-out notebook and her landline phone, she began. First, she'd call just to check in. Then she'd bring over a slice of cake. Soon, she'd arrange meetups at the park for casual chats. Little by little, a web took shape. One thread connected Dona Maria, who struggled to hear, to Suar Lindo, whose eyesight was fading but who loved to read aloud to her. Another thread tied Ana Clara, Dona Zuleide's granddaughter, to tech lessons, teaching seniors to send voice messages, WhatsApp stickers, and most importantly, good morning texts in the group chat that quickly formed. The Care Network, as it came to be called, grew without fanfare. No funding, no NGOs, no bureaucracy. Just kindness, trust, and the will to do good. Today, over 40 active members keep the rhythm. Visit rotations so no one goes a week without company. A group chat filled with psalms, funny stories, and, of course, prayer chains. Sunday. Solidarity meals cooked by younger neighbors. Rideshare systems for doctor visits and grocery runs. And above all, time to listen. Seu Afonso, 81, puts it simply. I used to spend whole days in silence, just the TV for company. Now, I know someone will knock on my door just to ask how I am. That's worth more than any medicine. The beauty? The network inspired other neighborhoods. Today, 4 nearby communities have adopted the idea. Some starting book clubs, others hosting park gatherings, even a weekly coffee for good, where recipes and life stories are shared. And at the center of it all stands Donna Nilda. With her wrinkled but steady hands, she organizes notes, checks names, and brews coffee with the care of someone who knows. Tending to others is sacred work. We care for others, we care for ourselves too. This gave me new life, she says, her eyes smiling. In the end, the Care Network isn't just about helping seniors. It's about reminding us all, at any age, that we need to belong. It's about whispering, without words. No one has to grow old alone. And perhaps that's the real secret. A community's strength isn't measured by its houses, but by the size of the hearts inside them. It all starts with a gesture. Every story you've heard today shares something profound in common. None began with grand resources or elaborate plans. There were no million-dollar budgets or viral social media campaigns. They started with something simple, almost too small to notice. A single sapling, an old sewing machine, a handful of seeds, a conversation between neighbors. But behind each gesture was something far greater, a genuine will to change things. And when that will meets compassion, for others the impossible begins to happen. Transforming a community isn't just about building walls or opening spaces. It's about building trust, connections, invisible bridges between hearts. It's looking at your neighbor and seeing an ally. It's realizing that even after 60, 70, or 80 years, we can still plant something that blooms. Because what truly sustains a community isn't its structures, it's its people. People who care, who call you by name, who offer what they have, even if it's little, with sincerity. And maybe right now you're watching this and thinking about your street, your neighborhood, your town, thinking it's been too long since anyone came together, that fences have grown taller than gardens, that silence weighs heavier than laughter. But what if it's you? What if you're the one to start something new? Maybe with an invitation, with an idea, or just the question that changes everything. What if we try this together? Yes, the world can feel too big, the problems too heavy. But remember, the greatest transformations begin with small steps. They begin when someone refuses to accept that things must stay the same. So here's the question for you today. What can you plant right where you are? Maybe a tree, maybe a weekly coffee gathering, maybe just the habit of listening. Because in the end, the kind of community that changes lives starts with one willing heart. And the most beautiful part? It's never too late to be that heart. If these stories moved you, share this video. Someone on the other side of the screen might be waiting for exactly this nudge to make a difference. And never forget, there's wisdom in our elders, strength in joined hands, and hope wherever community thrives.